Welcome everybody to the July meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee at North Norfolk District Council, and welcome members and officers. Just housekeeping, if there's a fire, which is not expected, we go down the stairs, not the lift, and we go out of the front door, and the toilets are outside. I think you probably all know that. As we've got a big agenda, please note that committee members will be given priority to speak during the debate of agenda items. So, do we have any apologies?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from councillors Leith, Bailey and Hankins.
Right, and no substitutes?
No substitutes.
Okay. Do we have any public questions and statements?
None received, Chair.
No. Right, minutes. Are we content to approve these as a correct record of the minutes of the meeting? Yeah, is everyone happy? Lovely, thank you. Do you have a proposer? And a seconder? Lovely, thanks very much. Do we have any items of urgent business?
None received,
None?
Chair.
Any declarations of interest, councillors? No? Okay, good. Thank you. We don't have a petition.
No, we don't, Chair.
Okay, and we don't have any matters referred
No, Chair.
to us by a member? No. And do we have any responses of the council or cabinet to?
No, Chair.
No, okay. Right. Okay, first substantive item is the outturn report. You're on the way, right? Lovely. We were. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. I won't put you through the pain of listening to me snuffle through this, as I would do normally. I'm slightly recovering at the moment. So the committee will remember that we had the period 10 monitoring report not so long ago. This is the final report that talks about the 25-26 budget. So you get the period 4, period 6, period 10, then the outturn following the budget being set. As you can see here, the surplus that we were anticipating, we continue to have at the end of the year, which is exactly where we had hoped to be, knowing that we've got lots of new things coming forward from the government, of which they're not funding, food waste being one of them. This paper has been to Cabinet, and at Cabinet I made a change. So on recommendation C, the Cabinet paper stated it would go into the general reserve, but during the meeting, after speaking with our 151 officer who's sitting to my right, we've created a brand new burdens reserve, and that's where we will transparently hold any money that we're intending to use to pay for the fantastic projects that the government will send our way but won't give us any money for. I will stop there and take any questions.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions? And before that, I'd just like to say it's a very good report that's got very detailed explanations, which is really helpful, I found. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I've got a few questions, but I'll talk, others will come in. Yes, I'd like to reiterate what you just said, Madam Chairman. It's a very well laid out report, easy to understand. And it also pleased that we actually do have a surplus at the end of the last year, which is good news for sure. The first question I have is one of obviously personal interest, and that's the approving the 188,000 for renovate Fakenham play area in my ward. I just want to check where the section 106 money actually came from.
So is that the specifics on which development?
Yeah, so it's quite, yeah. I mean, it's not vital. I mean, it's just a matter of interest, that one particularly, but.
We can take that away and revert to you. Yeah.
Do you want a follow-up question, councillor Cushing? So other people aren't quite ready to step forward. Thank you.
If I may go to page 21. One thing that's actually long bemused me as I've sat on this committee is the pension contributions, the employer pension contributions. Because every time we see an entry in there, it's always said it's effectively, there's some accounting adjustment and nothing much to see here. However, I understand that the employer contributions are something like 14 odd %, is it, for contributions? So presumably that's money that this authority is paying to the local government pension scheme. Where would I find those numbers in these accounts, please?
So I will start the answer and I'll throw over to my Deputy Section 151 in case I've missed anything. So the cash payments in terms of the pension we do at the cost centre level. So in each department you'll see employers staffing costs. So that's where you'll see that. There are additional accounting adjustments based on not just the valuation, but unwinding certain discounts through, and that's the kind of smoke and mirrors part. But you will find the cash bits in the individual INE, so I believe it's in Appendix B to the report. Do you have anything to add to that?
Just that the pension contributions are sort of updated regularly. So there's every couple of years they look at the sort of global economy and looking at the kind of global how investments are doing, how the portfolio is doing, and looking at the position of the pension. And then we have a little bit of say of how much we input into that based on how everything's doing. So that is something that's regularly looked at and updated as well.
If I may, I'd be interested to know actually what figure is actually, because you say it goes from multiple contributions, if I understand what you said, from different various departments, that's fine. But it would be interesting to know, because presumably at the end of the day, that's taxpayers' money being put into a pension scheme. It'd be interesting to know how much that actually is. Because obviously the funding obviously comes from taxpayers in the first place.
We can answer offline what the cash contributions are. If that would be helpful. Yeah.
Councillor Penfold.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and morning, everyone. Just to reiterate, excellent report. Thank you so much. Clear and concise, which is great. I've got a couple of questions, but I'll start with one and then maybe come back. So just on the new burdens reserve, good name, by the way. Do you anticipate that that's something that will need further bolstering or further? Is that for sure, or is that sort of? Do we know what's coming down the line, and we will need more money in that reserve eventually?
So if you remember, for the financial year 24-25, we again had a surplus, and we had put that in to the general reserve because we know we've got, for example, food waste coming. And then mid-year, I think it was period 10, I may get a correction over that. The money that we have for the recycling of packaging, what was that called? Where we have put that into general because what's that reserve called?
Extended payment.
The extended producer responsibility. Yes, fund. So we made that change and we put that into general as well. So we are very aware that not only have we got things like food waste coming, but we've also got local government reorganisation coming, of which we are to self-fund. So if we go back to the year 23-24, when we're looking at a very different financial position, and we've done the work to try and steady the ship based on government funding and the unfair funding reviews which subsequently followed, the government are now asking us to do more and giving us far less. So any surplus that we can get, we're putting into reserves so that we can counter that and meet our legal duty and still manage to do the things that we do for our district.
Do you want to follow up?
if I may, it's a different question.
It's okay. I mean,
If is that okay? Thank you. So just looking at page 35 and AE on page 35. So just a second point down there, Cromer Church Wall. So that just surprises me that that's something that we would pick up the cost for, because that's normally, I mean, I do a lot of work with churches freelance. That's normally a sort of parochial church council responsibility. But we actually own that, do we? That asset.
So in a closed churchyard, the responsibility tends to fall onto the local authority, and that's general would be a parish. But in this instance, I think we've got a different level of public ground investment there.
Okay. I mean, I know it does normally for the upkeep of the churchyard, but I wondered about the physical,
Yes, I think, and this is, I'm not close to the detail, but I believe that when the high street was widened, that the then local authority took on some of the repairs responsibility in exchange for giving up some of that churchyard, because that's not a closed churchyard, but
the burials?
but I think, yes, you're absolutely.
it's ours, mate. It's our responsibility.
Portfolio holder is absolutely correct. Closed churchyards can be transferred from a diocese to the local authority. And it's challenging for the diocese, for the local authority to refuse that. But they don't always do it.
Councillor Fletcher.
This is on page 34, where someone has been citing some of the defects in the reconstruction. Apparently, this is common knowledge, but I didn't know about it myself. I just wondered, what sort of defects and what extent, and how long they last, consistent, how much. I mean, there does seem to have been £155,570 set forward for it. But I just wondered about this, just how wide you could.
So as much as I would love to say that when new things are built, they're built without any snagging issues, that's not always the case. So in some cases we have contingency money which we keep back. I think generally we do 10%, and then after a period of time we reduce that overall. So I don't anticipate that any of our buildings will ever be without maintenance. We're just very lucky that we're able to build new leisure centres and be able to fund any snagging that comes with it. Yeah.
Councillor Bayes.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I've just got a question on page 30 where it says the estates team, there is basically a shortfall in terms of capital receipts, and the actual estates team continued to look at opportunities to generate additional capital receipts from selling surplus land. I just wondered if there was any idea of what land they're looking at selling.
Are you referring to 5.8?
Yes. The paragraph after the table.
Okay. So we do have land and other assets which we have looked at. One of those, for example, would be the land next to the Cedars property in North Walsham, which has been on the market for quite some time, although we've not pushed that for a number of years now. So we make an estimation on where we perceive we're going to be able to sell land that would be surplus to our requirements, which would then fund some of our projects. But as we all know, it's a difficult time to do much at the moment. So where we would have liked to have sold some of the land that we don't have any plans for currently, we're not able to. So we need to look at different ways of using that. And we have spoken about the Cedars land prior, and we continue to speak about that with interested parties.
Can I ask another question?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Looking at the actual capital items, and you've got the 3G pitch at North Walsham. I just wondered why or what £12,000+ has been spent on. Is it in preparation of the application, or?
So this is where you will see there's a conflict in the report. So in the capital programme, it talks about North Walsham, but on page 31, 5.1, it talks about Fakenham. So at some point historically, that land was earmarked for that money was earmarked for either North Walsham. It was earmarked for North Walsham. There's been a stall with North Walsham. Then the Fakenham investments come forward for the leisure centre there, and then subsequently that. So then we'd added Fakenham into it. So what you will see is now, because Fakenham is up and running, on page 31 under 5.1, that's actually been changed over to Fakenham. So if the North Walsham Football Club does get into a position where they're able to facilitate the pitch now with a renewed lease, then obviously we had agreement that we would support that funding, but Fakenham there first.
Yep. My final question is the Rocket House. Just a bit surprised because I thought the Rocket House, the money that was allocated for that was to bring it back into use, because of the damage that was caused through the sea. Or I noticed that there's a rollover. I just wondered, because it says to extend the life of the property. I just wondered what that entails. I haven't seen any information.
Beyond the original project, or are you asking why we're rolling over?
Well, I think the original project was to allocate the 1.x million to put the property right, because I think there was damage. But then it was that when it was reported, the damage wasn't as bad and didn't cost as much to put right. That's my understanding. I might have got this wrong.
So
So that is a rollover of the amount of money that wasn't spent. I just wondered what that money is being spent on, because it says it's now being used to renovate and extend the life of the property. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so obviously we did a lot of work on talking about what we were going to be doing with that building. It's not as straightforward as it just being something that we can push forward with on our own. There are lots of other parties involved, including neighbouring properties. So the rollover, my understanding is that is for temperature control. So one of the biggest issues that we have in the building is, yes, there was the moisture which crept in, but when you've got something by the sea, if you don't control the moisture within the building, then we're going to end up with the same issue. So whilst the overall problem wasn't what we'd first anticipated, we need to prevent this from continuing and to protect the lifetime of the building.
Thank you.
Doing very well. I have a few questions, if that's all right. So the fact we've got a surplus this year, which is brilliant, does it mean we're less likely to increase council tax so much next year because we know that we're going to do very well? Because that would be very beneficial for our residents.
I would really, and I'd said this last year, my hope would have been that with the work that we had done, that we wouldn't need to put up council tax. But if you remember last year, we became part of the 95% club, where because we do manage our finances so well, the government didn't give us what we had hoped we were going to get. So when the government do our funding, they assume that we're putting council tax up by the maximum. So we don't know, whilst the government have suggested that we should know what our funding is going to be next year, I have learned that I can't trust that. The only thing that I can trust is what we know and where we are. So as always, I would love to sit here and say we're not going to. But I don't know what the government's going to do. And then when we look towards LGR, we also know that we've got the equalising of council tax coming as well. So the thought is that every resident would then raise to be the same level of in banding as other neighbouring authorities. So we have to be really mindful that we don't also cause a huge jump for residents if that's the way we're heading. That said, that was my first question to Cabinet before we set this budget last year when we had the surplus at the end of 24-25, that I felt that would have been the right choice, and then the government changed the funding. So without cuts to services, I don't think we could guarantee that.
Okay, fine. The reserves are increasing, especially the general reserves, going from 2.85 to 4.5 million. It seems counterintuitive that we're putting lots of money in reserves when I know we have to have earmarked reserves, but the general reserves when we're about to be LGR'd.
So the original reason for doing that, if we remember last year, the surplus last year, we had put it in there because we knew that we had additional responsibility coming forward. When we come to period 4, I think, period 4, monitoring report, we will be readjusting that to transfer the appropriate amount into the new burdens reserve. I just want everybody to have clarity on what the money's supposed to be earmarked for, and I think that would help us all understand the level of spend that is necessary based on underfunding and the new expectations from government.
Thank you. And finally, it's disappointing to see over 1.8 million on capital budgets rolled forward, especially in the light of the data in the deprivation paper, where the barriers to housing in North Norfolk are very high, and we're ranked very poorly nationally. So I was particularly disappointed to see, say, for example, the compulsory purchase of long-term empty properties, and the temporary accommodation spend and the housing enabling, etc. I mean, when I say very disappointed, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but it's I noted it and thought that they were fighting against each other. Is there any way we can expedite the spend where it is most needed? Thank you.
I don't think that I will ever hear that you want us to spend money faster, Chair. But I'm very welcome to hear that that's to reduce the pressures that we're feeling over temporary accommodation. So I think it was I'm looking over at the portfolio holder for housing now. I can't quite remember when the last paper was that suggested we would be buying 9 more properties. Is that in this pack? So we are moving towards that position. So this is where we were at the end of March. We're now 4 months on, but I will hand over to our housing portfolio holder to respond further.
Thank you. Yes, we are in the process of searching for and procuring another nine properties over the course of this year, and we have the funding to do so from the sources of our portion of second homes tax and the grant funding. So it is our intention to continue to increase the amount of properties we have, which will obviously help redress the balance. And we look very carefully at what else we're doing to address the issue of lack of accommodation. And we are exploring other avenues which we hope will make a difference in the coming months and years. So yes, we never give up. Every one house is another person homed.
Yes, I totally understand that, but is there a timescale for this money?
It's within the funding. The last funding is for the next year. So yes,
and so this money will definitely be spent.
Yes,
on the items to which it's allocated.
Yes, yeah, we have every intention of spending it on the accommodation. But obviously, property purchase takes time, and we have to find the right properties because they need to be in the correct place and in a suitable condition for the right price. So we are getting there, and it is benefiting families, and there will be another 9 coming up and coming in the pipeline. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There's also quite a large amount of money for housing section 106 enabling. So presumably, and the long-term empty properties, those are different avenues. Are they being pursued as vigorously?
Yes, we are using Section 106
Mm.
money, you know, where we can, and we have been giving grants to some of the other social housing providers where needed. I
Okay.
think that's somewhere
Okay.
within the report.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you very much.
and if it's not there, I think it might even be in the portfolio holders report. But certainly, if you want any further information, please ask. But we
Yes,
are
I will indeed, yeah.
we are funding. We are using the funding where we can to make that difference, because obviously some of the small providers need a small injection of money or a loan to produce the few houses that they can.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Committee members, do you have any more questions? Councillor Cushing?
Thank you. I want to really just highlight one thing which I have mentioned before, and that's on page 27. If we look at the capital programme, the expenditure was, we had an underspend of 25 million pounds on that. It's a brilliant process question. I don't understand why a lot of some of the expenditure items in there were not already forecast for 26, 27. So, for example, the Flash project, we always knew that half of that cost was going to be this year. The same with food waste and other items. So why didn't we just move it into the year anyway?
I think that's a really good question, actually. I think part of it is because we're aiming to build a complete swimming pool, we put the entire cost of that in rather than which bit we're going to put in which year. Whereas if you think about Cromer Pier, for example, we've got the scheduled work, which is very separate over a number of years. It would be an interesting place if we could say which parts of the swimming pool we would be building in which years. So I think we forecast for the entire project, so we know the entirety of the cost, and then we spread it out because it's one project rather than projects undertaken over multiple years, if that makes sense.
I mean, I as someone in past life used to manage sort of project programs, and I'd have been taken behind the woodshed if I'd have reported that bigger variance, because we were expected to put within the actual financial year where the cost was actually meant to land. And for the Fakenham swimming pool, for example, one that I'm familiar with, because obviously I'm part of the steering group on that, it was always known that they had a detailed project plan. I'm assuming the contractors of when the cost would actually be incurred. So I thought you'd have made a reasonable stab of where that be, or if you simply divided it down the middle and put half in one way and half in the other, you would have been closer than you actually are. It just sort of, I mean, from my point of view, I'm trying to help you in a way, because obviously the figures look worse than they would have otherwise be had you put known items on there if you just moved them forward. So it's only really a sort of technical one. It's not the end of the world type question, but I'm trying to be helpful, Councillor Shires, as always.
No, completely. I think that isn't something which we would choose to do because it's a single project rather than multiple projects spread over a number of years. Obviously, the way that we do show it here is that you can see what we have spent and what we're intending to spend. There have been many times where I would have hoped that local government finance had mirrored some of the public sector in the way that we do the accounting, the private sector, sorry, having come from a finance background myself. But I don't think that it's disingenuous, and I think that it still retains transparency so that we can see what's being spent in any given year and what the intended amount was to be spent. If there's a transparency issue, then I'd be happy to address it.
Okay, one final question. Very nice to see the breakdown of funding sources for the capital scheme, capital programme. Thank you very much indeed for doing that. Is the level of borrowing at 9.7 mil what you would expect as a percentage of the total spend? Is that approximately constant across our lifetime?
So if you remember, when we do our treasury management reporting and any kind of capital, we do include all that information. As we all know, I've spoken about it multiple times with new burdens and things like that. We have had times where we have said that we would borrow for a project, but we've been able to fund it internally, which is some kind of borrowing, but it's not external borrowing. I would love us to be in a position, and I think every local authority would be, where you wouldn't have to externally borrow. And in terms of externally borrowing, it generally is borrowing from the government in some way and paying it back with interest. It's not going to any other, so we're borrowing taxpayers' money and paying it back with extra taxpayers' money. I would love us to be in a position where we weren't having to borrow because there was enough money in the system, but all the money that we've been able to accrue through shrewd management of finances is being spent on projects the government wish for us to undertake without funding us for it. So if we want to do things, and if we want to look after our assets, and we want to build new swimming pools or leisure centres, for example, unfortunately, we're in the position where we would have to borrow to do so.
Thank you very much indeed. So have our members content they've scrutinised this report sufficiently? Yes? And we're asked to recommend the following recommendations. The recommendations on page 15. Do I need to read them all out, or are you happy to do that yourself? Okay. Should we take them as on? Everyone happy with that? Should we take them on block? Otherwise, it'll be quite a long winded process. I mean, the only one I had a slight question about was the lease of the electric vehicles. Is that really essential? I mean, I'm not anti-electric vehicles, but I thought we had some electric vehicles already. On page 50, well, I've got it on page 15, recommendation I. Again, I reiterate the direction of travel of electric vehicles is absolutely the way to go, but
I believe that particular vehicle was the van used by the property services manager.
Yeah.
Which had reached the end of its lease.
okay, fine.
So rather than getting a diesel van, he continues to use an electric one.
Okay, thank you very much for that explanation. Okay, with that, are we happy to approve the recommendations? Okay, do I have a proposer? And a seconder? Okay, and all in favour? Okay, thank you very much indeed. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much indeed for your help with that one. Super. So we move on to debt recovery. Sean, did you want to come forward? Morning. You got a, are you hopeful of tonight? Good. Good. That's what we like to see. Right, I think we're fairly conversant with these reports, but Sean, but if you'd like to briefly, are there any highlights? Are there any variations from last year?
So I hope that everybody is has a really good understanding of this report. We have spoken about debt recovery before and what we do for debt recovery. We've also spoken about how we wish for anybody who is finding themselves in a difficult position financially, whether or not they're struggling with council tax or their business rates, that they should approach the council as soon as they are struggling. We have had some really positive figures this year in terms of collection rates, which we always tend to have. But the one things that I just wanted to reiterate is about our write-offs, which is where it's not where we erase the debt, it's where we don't chase the debt. And the main reasons for council tax write-offs is bankruptcy, liquidation or debtor absconding, and the non-domestic business rates is where the debtor went into bankruptcy or liquidation. So those are things that are beyond our control. but obviously the team do continue to push where we can do. The other information that I just wanted to share with the committee is that we are top of the collection table for Norfolk. Again, so if we compare it to all our authorities, we have in Norfolk, we have got the highest collection rates, which is exciting for us. We've always aimed to be at the top quartile, so the top 25% in the country. That's out of 295 councils. So we have finished 11th for our non-domestic business rates collection and 14th for our council tax collection rates nationally. So that means we find ourselves in the position of being in the top 3 to 4% for our non-domestic business rates, that's business rates collections, and top 4 to 5% for our council tax collections rate. In the Eastern region, we are second for business rates and fourth for council tax out of 45 councils. So our teams, ably led by Officer Knight, have done a fantastic job at making sure that we do have the money to do the things that we need to do. That said, our team in revenues has got a really good working relationship with the financial inclusion team, specifically for council tax. So if we do have residents who are finding that they've received a letter from the revenues team saying you're behind on your council tax, the financial inclusion team are amazing as a wraparound and have really supported some of our residents where they have had benefits which they should have been claiming or where there's a gap overall. So a huge thank you to our teams who are very quietly and very diligently working behind the scenes to make sure that we can run because they're collecting our council tax and business rates efficiently. But I will pass over to Officer Knight if there's anything else to add.
Simply, the paper does include sundry income. I don't manage sundry income. It's a finance function, but just to make it easier for members, we decided to keep it in there, which we did historically. So, but if you've got any questions on the paper or the content, then I'm here to try and answer what best I can. Thank you.
Members, do you have any questions? This is a good paper, and you do a fantastic job in some ways. I mean, as long as people aren't disadvantaged by your enthusiasm, as it were, it's a good paper. I mean, I did think there could possibly be a little bit more explanation of some of the variances and the, but we've got some questions to ask you to, or at least I have a few questions to ask. I mean, it's concerning to see the increase in arrears in both council tax and non-domestic rates. And what are the reasons for that? And are we offering enough support?
I think probably it's widely known that there's a cost of living crisis. Customers for council tax obviously are struggling paying bills. We have to fight really hard sometimes to let customers know it's a priority to pay council tax, because sometimes, you know, there's other things they'd rather spend the money on, which I'm sure we all have been there or understand that. Business rates as well. I mean, the energy situation just now, I mean, listening to it on the news again, the prices are going up for oil. This has an impact. They're struggling. Business rates particularly had a reduction in retail, hospitality, leisure. Discount for years has been coming down, and it's actually sort of gone altogether. The government have given a reduced multiplier. So that there's lots of challenges there. I will say that my team, I've got to say, are really hungry to try and do the best for North Norfolk, and I think it shows in this paper. But going forward, so I don't mind just taking the opportunity to say it's going to get harder. It's not going to get easier. We obviously charge second home premiums, which has added like £8 to £10 million additional council tax collection to that's what we're trying to achieve. You know, I don't mind sharing with you, our officers will say it's a better class of debtor when you're dealing with these cases, because they've obviously got an asset additional to their home. But it doesn't make the job any easier, and you get into legal litigation regarding maybe ask them to sell the house if they can't afford to pay the council tax. So there are some real serious hard work going on behind the scenes to reach these, and there is consultations coming through thick and fast. I know Lucy's received them and copied into responses from the council, and the government are very keen to soften some of the bad publicity out there regarding council tax, particularly collection. And I've got to say, we're quite good. We actually do listen to customers and engage. And as mentioned, we work with financial inclusion teams in Norfolk and CAB and others. So there's a lot of work going on, but some councils unfortunately do get a bit of bad publicity. And the same with enforcement agents. You've probably heard of them on the TV, but I can assure you how we deal with those situations are far different to what you see. Thank you.
Just if we look at table 4, for example, we can see it might have been helpful to potentially have had it as a percentage, perhaps. So in 24-25, we were collecting far more than in 22-23. So it would mean, I think, maybe when we next do the paper, we would do a percentage, because I think that would help more, and you can see the same for the business rates as well. So potentially we could go away, and when we next report on this, we would do a percentage so we could see if there's a percentage increase.
Is that sufficient support? Because there's how often is the CAB open, for example, in Cromer or Holt, or if you were having financial troubles, is that sufficient support to get you out of a difficult situation? Is there anything else that I know the financial inclusion team are fantastic, but is there anything else that we could be doing?
So I think that this is potentially where, as local members, we would need to make sure that everybody who touches a member of our community is very aware. So whether or not that's hairdressers or the post office or anybody that somebody would talk to on a regular basis. I know myself and Councillor Gray in our other capacity in a charity, we had quite a run on financial inclusion referrals, homelessness applications, domestic abuse, escape plans. So it's more about whether or not we can put more information into our communities that help is available. A lot of the people who I've had come forward to help have been people who've potentially avoided paying council tax for a number of years and are trying to get themselves in a position where they want to stop the fear of somebody coming to collect. And that's sometimes has been quite an interesting conversation. I have had a few people who have read something on social media who have been told that we don't need to pay council tax because it's not legal and it's an illegal collection. And that's quite a difficult conversation to get round. But whether or not everybody needs to have more confidence in making a financial inclusion team referral or something like that, I think that would help. Our churches is another good place to put relevant information, because even in rural communities, they tend to be open and a place of solace for many who are struggling.
Thank you. And can you just remind us, we had this discussion last year, but we couldn't remember, what the difference is between direct debit collection for domestic versus business users? So we've got 78% for council tax and 30% for business rates.
This has been an ongoing discussion in my team for many years, actually. And what I'm always told by those who are closer to it than me is that most businesses who pay business rates prefer to pay by backs, and that's their choice. Getting businesses or council tax customers on direct debit just makes it easier for us. It's a regular payment. We're in control. You probably remember the old standing orders. You were in control as a customer, standing orders. You set it up yourself. But direct debits is an efficient way to get money in on a regular basis. And also our links revenues to finance. This is where like treasury management comes in, because if you've got a regular money coming in each month and you know it's going to be X million pounds by direct debit, then it makes it a little bit easier to invest because you know when the money's coming. People who are in control of their money, there's no guarantee when they're going to pay, if they pay. So that's where the work is. Can I just pick up as well? I didn't say this, but I mentioned obviously some of the signposting we do. The job of a recovery person within a revenues team now is so different to years ago. It used to be very hard on people making arrangements with people, and you have to pay by this time. That's really changed for quite a while ago in North Norfolk, and you'll know from even customer services people and benefits as well. They try and help people by giving them all the information around discounts, exemptions, benefits, and then you've got the welfare side outside of that, welfare income. So we can boost their income, obviously it helps. So all these things are things that we try and signpost or talk to customers about. If they engage with us, we can help them. And quite often, on the occasions we have a hardship case and someone's asking for help, quite often there's information there to say, well, actually, have you tried this? We don't necessarily just give them hardship because it costs the council money, but we can actually help them get the benefits maybe or the help they need elsewhere. So.
Yeah, so I can use an example where somebody had approached because they had council tax that they needed to pay. And when you looked at why council tax was the struggle for them, it was because of other debt that they had from a previous situation, and where their earnings were too great to get council tax benefit. The utilities companies, for example, have special policies in place for people who've escaped domestic abuse. So they were able to look at that individually and write that off. So that's relieved some of the pressures. So it's not necessarily all about council tax as much as many of us, when our council tax direct debit goes out or when our bill comes on, we all think, you know, that feels like a lot of money. It's making sure that everything in somebody's life is how it should be and how we manage that. And that's the revenues team is sometimes the front door to that. The customer services team is sometimes the front door to that. But the team that work in benefits and financial inclusion deal with a wide range of issues, and it's absolutely amazing to know the depths that they will go to support our residents.
Thank you. That's the base.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a really good report. Congratulations on what you do. I think it's brilliant. I just got a couple of questions talk about communities and our parishes and that. Is there any particular data that sort of shows where you have the issues, where you're chasing more than you are anywhere else? In terms of, I don't necessarily think it's deprivation all the time, because, you know, people live to a certain standard and suddenly that standard can drop at any time. So I just wonder whether there's any data to sort of show whether there's sort of areas of our parishes where you're struggling or you are contacting people trying to chase that debt. And the other thing is, do you see that the same people repeated each year, or do you've solved the problem? Is there a percentage of solving the problem, or are they coming back year on year? You're chasing the same people.
Okay, so the first question, geographical sort of arrears, if you want to say that. No, we don't really look into that, to be totally honest. We don't sort of work in that way. The nearest we get to geographic breakdown, and probably most members are aware of that, is when we share information around empty homes and second homes. We can work out percentages of properties, but that's looking at property status. So that's a little bit easier for us to do that. And probably is more interesting, I think, to members. You've got to be careful with arrears, because obviously it gets personal, and there's only so much we can share. So we don't really look at it area. I think it is a personal thing. So your second part of the question, yeah, made me laugh a little bit, because yes, you're right. We could write a list of those that go to summons probably every year. We pretty much confirm who they are. However, no, there are people who do find themselves in trouble. Their circumstances change. They need support, as I mentioned earlier, and we'll do our utmost to help them. And we're quite happy to cancel any court costs that are incurred if they show us they turned a corner and they're back on track, because we don't want to go to court. It wastes officer time and money, which costs the council. So we can educate them and do that. It's understanding the engagement is really key, because there are some customers who just don't engage, and we have to work hard. And in the digital age that we're in, we're all trying to reduce our costs. So we're all looking to do things more electronically, so we don't have to chase people ideally through paper bills and reminders. We've got a massive amount of work going on at the moment in my team to try and do that year on year, to try and save money whilst we're trying to collect it, save on the administration. And as you're probably all aware as well, postage cost goes up every year. So it's sort of trying to maintain our costs because we know it's going to go up. But yeah, it's a lot of hard work. But you know, hopefully we can help those who want to listen and try and help. And some, unfortunately, are going to be carry on in the years to come, even when we're a unitary council.
Councillor Rouse, thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for a very detailed report, not just on the debt recovery, but on the outturn report as well. I was just wondering, what in terms of debt recovery and council tax, what kind of payment plans sort of are in place for residents to not only ensure that obviously we do get the debt, but also that it's structured in a way that they can pay and that is sort of I'm trying to think of the word, sort of in tune with what their financial situation is. Thank you.
So I think once all the work's been done, with residents to understand financial situations, and if council tax benefit is applied, I think there's two things. It's one, making sure that the council tax is paid for the current year, and then the arrears is then spread. And that's generally done in an affordable way. And it's sometimes it might mean that the team would need to look at the outgoings of a household, for example, just to kind of figure out where people are to make sure that we're making the right decisions. I've known people who are paying their council tax but are paying an extra £5 or an extra £25 or an extra £50. The team are incredibly flexible. I think the part of it that some of our residents really struggle with, and I think this is an education bit, is that sometimes residents don't realise that council tax is something you pay every year. That sometimes I've paid my council tax, so I've had another bill, what's my other bill for? And sometimes they don't realise they have to go back and just touch base to make sure they're getting the right council tax benefit, or when circumstances change. So it is, the dialogue is really, really important. And the team are really lovely. I think where we see debt and sometimes some of the televised programs of the people coming around with the body cams and all, you know, suited up and things like that, it's not like that. I've had debt recovery where people have knocked on a door and the residents explained why they're struggling, and sometimes it is domestic abuse or domestic violence situation that they've escaped from. And as soon as that's said, the team will back off and say, look, okay, we understand we're not going to add any stress to you, and we'll go back. So it's all centered around affordability, but it's true affordability, not where some of the media would like to suggest that people who are struggling financially are affording holidays and TVs and all the rest of it. It's based on true financial affordability.
Can I just add as well, some of the things we do, the statutory notices that go out or the bills are monthly, which is defaulted to 10 normally. But we obviously offer 12 months, and we obviously, some customers want to pay weekly. So we set up arrangements. Some people have got different kinds of arrangements to suit their income. It's those maybe who have trouble in paying bills generally are the more difficult ones, hence why we link with financial inclusion, because there might be some kind of budgetary help they need, how to budget themselves rather than necessary financial help. Okay.
Super, thanks very much. And does anyone have any questions about the recovery policy itself? I mean, the policy aims seem to cover very much what you've been speaking about. So, anyone got any comments, questions? No? Okay. Councillor Penfold?
Yeah, only just a comment really to say well done on those fantastic collection rates. You mentioned Councillor Shires being in the top 3 or 4%, I think, nationally, which is amazing. So I think on behalf of the committee, you should say well done on that. It's a really
Yes,
good,
yeah.
you know, that was nationally and within the East as well. So fantastic.
So did anyone have any additional recommendation to the ones that we were asked? I don't think the one about location is going to have any legs, given that there's the sort of
I will take it away
privileged
and see whether there's anything we can do on there, but it's not something that we've done before. So I'll have a look and see whether there is elements of areas. I think if there's deprivation in an area, there's probably arrears as well, but we can do some research.
Is that an action rather than, yes, is everyone happy with that as an action? I think anything more specific might be a little bit too personal. Okay, so is everyone happy with the recommendations on page 73? That we approve the annual report, which details the council's write-offs in accordance with the council's debt write-off policy and performance in relation to revenues collection, and we approve the continued delegated authority as shown as Appendix 2 for write-offs. Is everyone happy with that? Okay, do I have a proposer and a seconder? And everyone in favour? Okay. Thank you very much indeed. So, thank you very much indeed. I hope you feel better soon.
Maybe it's ill soon. Probably can't do the elections tomorrow, so they might be allowance that. I wouldn't do that.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, both of you. Okay, so now we do the housing benefit debt recovery. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Welcome, Trudy, to Officer Grant to co-present this. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Did you want me to do a summary, Jill?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, welcome everyone. So the Housing Benefit Debt Recovery report is looking at the amount of debt outstanding for 25-26 financial year. We continue to manage a significant legacy debt portfolio following the housing benefit migration to universal credit. As at the 31st of March 26, we had an outstanding debt balance of just over £880,000, with most of that debt now being recovered through what we call the sundry debtor process. So that's where we've actually invoiced for the overpayment because the housing benefit entitlement has ended. Although our debt recovery rate for housing benefit is at 31%, which does on the face of it look a low recovery rate, it's actually considered a strong performance by the DWP, and that is on the basis that housing benefit is a really difficult debt to collect due to ongoing deprivation, not being able to trace debtors. And also, unlike council tax, which understandably is a high priority debt to collect, housing benefit isn't considered as a priority debt. So we don't have many options when it comes to collecting the debt. However, our benchmarking does show that North Norfolk remains one of the stronger performing Norfolk authorities. Our write-offs for 25-26 total just under £37,000 across 129 cases. The details for those write-offs are in the report. The write-offs have been approved in line with council policy and covered by our bad debt provision. As I say, the key challenge in maintaining recovery of housing benefit debt is due to reduced caseloads following universal credit migration and housing benefit being a difficult debt to collect. We do work closely with our financial inclusion officers and the early intervention teams to look at the wraparound support. We also have a CA debt recovery officer in-house who works on North Norfolk cases only, helping households manage debt. So members are asked to note performance, note the write-off levels, recognise the ongoing impact of the universal credit migration on our debt recovery, and support future recovery strategies and approve the annual report. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. It's a very clear report. Do members have questions? Councillor Cushing?
Thank you. Thank you for your update and your report. If we turn to the 880,000, I mean, that's obviously a sizable sum of money. And I see you list the generic causes of that. But I mean, of that 880,000, what are the primary reasons for that, that we overpaid people? And also, how many cases do we know that relates to?
To give an exact split, I'd have to refer to the housing benefit subsidy claim. So it will look at whether the overpayments arisen from what they call a claimant error, which is where someone's delayed in telling us of a change in their circumstances retrospectively, so after those payments have been made. Or it could be due to what we call a local authority error, which is where we've delayed as an authority in either assessing that reported change in circumstance, or we've made a previous error in the assessment of our claim. A majority, I know, will be due to claimant error. We do our best to educate claimants in making sure that they do report changes to us promptly. We promote that through the Outlook magazine, through the benefit year-end notifications online, through social media, every opportunity that we have. But I can give you specific figures, but I'll need to refer to the subsidy claim.
No, it's okay. You don't need any extra work. Just had a general idea. That's fine. Okay. Thank you.
How are we benchmarking in terms of processing, changing of circumstances versus new claims? Because I remember there was a debate about that when we were looking at benchmarking data a while ago. Because obviously the change in circumstances, is that where the problems arise to a large extent?
Yes. So we have around 2,000 reported change of circumstances every month, which is a considerable number of changes coming through. Our assessment team predominantly looks at the housing benefit changes in circumstances as a priority when looking at the work coming through, to release officers to be able to work on those housing benefit changes as a priority. We've now set up automation for the council tax support changes coming through, which has significantly helped, particularly with the universal credit migration, because we do get a significant number of universal credit changes in circumstances coming through, which takes a lot of time. So we're looking at ways where we can release resources into processing those housing benefit changes in circumstances as soon as they come through, and equally the housing benefit new claims, so that we get that money out of the door as soon as possible. I think it was a couple of years ago we reduced our speed of processing targets because we were performing really well. The team's still performing really well in new claims. Changes of circumstances have slipped slightly because we've had a couple of staff leave. So we're just going through a recruitment phase at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. And what percentage of the debt is irrecoverable because of the migration from housing benefit to universal credit? Do we know?
I don't have a specific split on that. We may be able to do it with some drilling down on the data, but it's not something I've considered doing.
I don't want to waste your time because you're obviously very busy.
That's fine, but
processing other claims and all that sort of thing. So I just wondered, because there must come to a point where we can predict how much we're not.
Yeah, we wouldn't be at that point yet with the specific migration cases. Migration ended on the 31st of March 26.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we would be going through the process, the standard recovery process of trying to get that money back in from those households who have migrated onto universal credit. But we knew from the start that we would have difficulty in collecting some of that money because now claimants are on universal credit housing costs instead of housing benefit. Utility companies can now attach that benefit. They can now attach universal credit. So we know households will now be seeing new attachments to their benefit that they wouldn't have seen before.
Good, thank you very much indeed. Councillor Penfold.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for the report. I'm just wondering that debt recovery rate of 31%, is that sort of historically around about average for us? Is it better, is it worse, or is that actually an unfair question given the migration over to universal credit? So
No, that's a fair question. I think historically it has been lower. In the past couple of years, we've concentrated on looking at different recovery methods. So, for example, enforcement agents we know doesn't particularly work well for housing benefit debt collection. Unlike council tax, they have really restricted methods. They can only write or phone. They can't visit people. They can't levy goods. So we had a really low success with enforcement agents. We've now started working with a company called Payment Plan. We've just come to the end of a trial period with them. So Payment Plan will take a number of our debts. They will use what we call the nudge theory to contact debtors through apps and through emails. It tends to be electronic as opposed to the phone calls or in writing because they tend to be ignored. And we've had a really good success rate. It's really easy for the debtor to set up a payment plan on their phone. They don't ask for a lot of information. They will accept a minimal amount for repayment of the debt. And we've found some really old debts as well, where people have actually engaged. We haven't been able to, enforcement agents haven't been able to. So we're looking at different recovery routes and sort of bringing those into current times as well. Yeah, at the moment that seems to be having the right effect. But in terms of the 30-odd%, the last couple of years, that seems to be a norm for us. But we're hoping by increasing and investigating different recovery methods, that will increase.
It's interesting to hear about the relative success of sort of electronic communication, I guess, which makes sense. So we're obviously paying that company to do that, but that's an investment that
Not at the moment.
we're not.
The free trial.
Oh, is it? Okay,
Yes.
right. So
Yeah.
we are then going to make the decision.
Yeah, so the benefits manager is now looking at the success of that trial. We also brought in the corporate finance team, who are also holding, as Sean was saying, they also hold some sundry debt cases. So they have used this trial as well to see if it's a good recovery method going forward. And again, they have seen cases where they've tried to engage over a number of years, and they've suddenly engaged using this method. So so we'll just review that against the costs of what we've had come in and what it would potentially cost us going forward. But the 880, it's income to the council. Every penny we collect comes back into the council.
Councillor Bayes.
Yeah, picking up on that trial that you're using at the moment, what percentage did that company take in terms of getting that money back to the council?
That would be the discussion should we decide to proceed with them. So under the pilot, the only fee we had to pay was the Stripe fee, where they use Stripe to collect the payment electronically, which was minimal. But going forward, it will be a new contract, and that's what we would then have to look at, and that would be dependent on the number of cases, the size of the debt that we potentially would be sending them should we proceed with that as a formal contract.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, I don't know if this question, but Norwich's been quite good at doing this. Is that something that would be like the Norwich, or would there some secret that we could learn?
I'm not sure if the fact that they've got housing stock would help in those figures. I think they'd be slightly distorted because of that, whereas ours is all private tenant debt.
I had another question about the sort of strategic direction. Is there enough emphasis on prevention? There seems to be quite a lot on management. on cure, but not on actual the prevention of getting into housing debt in the first place?
Yep, so we've got the low income family tracker, the lift dashboard, that we use to target households through the income maximisation. We've obviously got our early help and prevention team and the CA debt advisor there to do the wraparound support. But the prevention at the moment is coming through the targeting. We're doing it from that angle at the moment.
So would it be valid to say that could be pulled out as part of the, I don't know what you guys think, but so it was more overtly expressed? Obviously, you're doing all the work, but it's
Yeah.
disseminated. Would
Yeah.
it be worth putting that into the policy to show that that's an
Yeah,
important
sure.
facet of your work? I don't know what members think about that. Is that a direction of travel? With it? Wouldn't be too much
No,
effort.
no, I can do that.
Would
Yeah,
people-
happy to do that.
Would people agree to that? Okay, so do we need a formal recommendation for that or to make a change to a officer's report? Okay, so the recommendation would be that that the officer would add a paragraph on prevention to the strategic approach is in order to, I mean, you're doing all the work, it's just demonstrating that you're doing it in one place, that you're doing the
Yeah,
work to
yeah,
better
basically.
emphasize would you like to put some words together, Claire? Would you like to read them out too?
Yes. Within the strategy, which identifies the preventative approach.
Yep, is everyone happy with that? I don't want to be too specific. Is there anything else you'd like included? Yeah? Is that everyone happy with that? Okay, can I have a
Yes, thank you.
proposer? Sue, do I need a proposer and a seconder for that? Oh, I'll propose it then. Thank you very much. Seconder? Rafts of seconders. Okay, so everyone in favour? Thank you very much. Okay, so is everyone, so what are the recommendations here? That we approve the annual report and approve the continued use of legislative recovery measures to ensure revenue to the council is maximised. Is what you've been describing that new method of recovery with this agency, is that's what's called a legislated recovery method?
No, the legislated recovery would be from ongoing housing benefit writing off. The legislated recovery methods would be those supported by the DWP through their legislation. So things like payment plan are and enforcement agents are at authorities' discretion to use.
Okay, so are members content with that recommendation without any alterations? Because that to me seems like you're using a slightly different technique, which could potentially be very successful, be very positive for the organisation. I wondered if the recommendation needed to reflect that. What do members think? It's a small point, but otherwise are you happy with it as it is? Well, if we're approving the continued use of legislative recovery methods, but we're also tacitly approving another method, or are we by making these recommendations, or is it too early to do that because it's only a pilot?
So can I just add that as it's actually only a pilot,
Yeah,
I
think
think
that.
we'd be wise to just wait and see
I think that's
rather than chase something that we don't know.
Yeah,
If we
I think-
find out at the end of a year, it's really not going to make a huge financial benefit, particularly the costs of recovery, then obviously it wouldn't be something.
think
And we
that's
can report
a
that
fair point.
once we've done the trial.
Could I
Fair
just,
point.
when does that pilot end?
It has ended
Yes.
and they're currently reviewing
Okay.
the success of
That would be relatively quickly, we know.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we note, could you bring the results back to us just out of interest? Would people also have the results sent to us in an email? That would be really interesting because it sounds like very good work. Okay, so everyone's happy with the recommendation. Do I have a proposer and a seconder? Oh, wow. Lovely, and everyone in favour? Okay, thank you very much indeed. So now we move on to delegated decisions. So we're to receive and note the report. Councillor Denny, do you normally lead us through this? And we don't need to lead us very far, having said that, because it's fairly self-explanatory.
Try and do a sort of rolling program, so an annual sort of summary. So that's why you're sort of starting with the ones that were sort of captured at the end of last year. I do have the previous ones on the website, so if you want to go further back, we do still have that record, but it's to just try and capture them sort of a decent amount, roughly a year's worth in each report.
Has anyone got any questions on this report? Any comments? In which case, can we say we've noted it? Yeah, and we're happy to move on. Okay, so are we minded to have a coffee break before we go on to the next item? Okay, councillors, I hope that's all right with everybody. No? I think we're more in favour of a coffee break than not. Okay, so we are ahead of schedule, chaps. Should come. Yeah. We haven't stopped yet. So we'll come back at 11. We'll come back to 11. Okay, guys, we've broken. We'll come back to 11 o'clock.
Yes, Chair. So members may remember, I think it was in April, at the April meeting, we had some general deprivation data provided, and members asked for a little time to consider that information and that data, and then for the item to come back in front of committee to allow you to have a discussion on perhaps themes and where as a committee you felt you could add value. Included in the pack this month is some further information, which is the health-related information. But I say the agenda item that you requested from April was to consider how you could add value generally to this area.
Sorry, I had rather thought at the time that we were going to actually look at this raw data, not that any of us will be able to unpick it, not necessarily having the skills, but at least you might be able to find your way around it a bit. And I'm totally welcome this. This is great, and any data is better than nothing. But I had thought at one stage we would actually have the raw data to pour through, but that's something for people to discuss whether they actually want that, and how they want to take this report, which is excellent. Don't get me wrong. So that's how we've got here. So, Officer Grant, would you like to? Are you the chief protagonist on this?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I'm happy to provide raw data, but because the indices of deprivation are just so broad, if you're happy to provide a steer on certain indices that you would like us to drill down on and present in that raw data form, I'm happy to go away and do that. For the purpose of the session today, I have provided this additional information just to give you a bit more data based on the last discussions that were had, that does look at specific areas of deprivation, just showing how they affect certain wards across North Norfolk and how that then ties into the data that we can then extract from the low income family tracker, which gives us then insights at household level as well as ward level. So I'm happy just to give you a run through of the report and how I've approached that. So as I say, this report is in response to the committee's previous request for further consideration of how North Norfolk District Council supports residents experiencing health-related barriers. So it's using deprivation data, health inequality information and household level low-income family tracker data to identify where disadvantage is most concentrated and where our preventative partnership activities may have the greatest impact. The evidence shows that health-related barriers are closely linked to wider social and economic factors, including income, employment, housing, transport, access to services and disability. While North Norfolk is not among the most deprived districts nationally overall, the data does highlight specific market towns, coastal areas, rural communities where multiple forms of deprivation overlap. So that is based on the Norfolk Insights data, which is public information. So specifically, the reports highlighted that there are 4 wards: North Walsham East, Stalham, Lancaster South and Suffield Park, that appear across multiple deprivation indices, which include income, employment and health deprivation domains. Additional awards do include Cromer, North Walsham West, Holt and Wellsworth Holcombe. But I have stressed in the report that whilst not all wards are referred to in the report, it is acknowledged that there are specific pockets of deprivation across the district. So we're not ignoring that fact in the report. Those areas of deprivation, they are recognised and accounted for through our wider work across the council. Rural and coastal communities also face significant barriers to housing and access to services, which are obvious important wider factors that influence health and well-being. Our low-income family tracker data can provide further household level insight within those priority wards, with many households who receive housing benefit and council tax support also showing additional vulnerabilities that are linked to unemployment, disability caring responsibilities, children in the household, and young people who are not in education, employment or training, and also signs of poverty. So this strengthens the case for using both place-based data, which is the Norfolk Insights, as well as household level data, which is our low-income family tracker data to target prevention and early support. So the report concludes that North Norfolk Health and Wellbeing Partnership provides the most appropriate existing mechanism for coordinating any action. Councillor Withington is here to give some more information around the partnership. It's proposed that this partnership approach should be supported by continued use of the deprivation and lift data alongside the development of the North Norfolk anti-poverty strategy, which is a recommendation from the previous report. And the committee is asked to note the evidence presented, support the continued evidence-led targeting of preventative activity, whilst inviting the Health and Wellbeing Partnership to present its current priorities and work programme, and also the endorsement of the development of a North Norfolk anti-poverty strategy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very succinct. Members, do you want to debate anything before we dive into more detail on Health and Wellbeing Board in terms of general direction of travel or anything? Do you mind, Councillor Withington?
Yeah, thank you. Just on that sort of general direction, I suppose I'm just interested. The report does mention education a couple of times, but it's not a headline, if you like. I mean, how much is that a factor in terms of health-related barriers, sort of educational attainment? I'm kind of thinking of it that way, but also free school meals as well. So I'm just wondering that kind of, and when I say education, I'm really talking about schools, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I haven't delved into education itself. So I've pulled education out for what we call the NEETs. So those that are not in education, employment or training. So NEETs are a group that as a council and as the partnership, we're specifically looking to support. So one of those factors would be looking into why that person isn't in education, ongoing training, etc. But that's the specifics, and the drill down of that isn't in this report, but it is something that is being considered as a wider piece of work across the partnership.
I would be interested just to see how that particularly, I mean, obviously the NEETs are perhaps a little bit older than what I was talking about. I was thinking more about sort of school-aged children. So I guess that's sort of, well, you get preschool right through to sort of 16.
Yeah.
So how you know, educational levels of educational attainment might be at play here.
Okay. Yep.
And access to that.
Yep. I can certainly speak to county council who would hold that data.
That's great.
Thank you for the information that's in this report. It is good, although I will try and echo some of the chair's comment in. It's great that we've got it, but I think maybe as a committee we hadn't actually quite committed ourselves to that strand per se. And I think Councillor Penfold's point raises that maybe we've gone off a little bit fast on the mark here, because we're not really certain that we wanted to necessarily pursue exactly this set of barriers. Maybe there were other barriers and other things that we want to explain, although I do really welcome this because it is important information. It's nice for us to have, but as a committee, we might need to step back and look at the data and set our direction a bit better, because I think we've gone off a little bit half-cocked possibly in this instance, but I do massively appreciate this. It's really good to have this information. So maybe we need to set up a different session to try and nail down where we're going there.
I mean, I'm totally, as you can imagine, with my background, health is incredibly important to me. But what struck me from this report was the barriers to housing and services were really where we were faltering in terms of an area. So I would hate to ignore, I'm not saying that we should ignore health, but I think there's that to me really, which I thought was very interesting, and it's JSNA and data, so we can't presumably argue with it. And I would thought that that's that we're so low. I thought that was quite interesting that we should, that's something where we do have levers in this organisation. So I think we shouldn't we lose sight of that, notwithstanding what you've said. Having anyone else got any comments at this stage, Councillor Bayes, and then we'll move on.
I just want to echo what Councillor Sol said. I think education is really important. I think you've alluded to the fact that Norfolk County Council will have a lot of information on NEETs, and NEETs it does take people from schooling right up to further education. They're all out. I mean, the increases of that particular amount of people in this last year has made national news. You know, there's a 8-point-something% out of, you know, NEETs not attending schools. I don't know about homeschooling, but that affects it as well. But I think for me, I'm concerned that education is one of the things that lack of aspiration, lack of development in terms of what is available within our areas to sort of apply for. I think linked to that is probably jobs that are available in the area. That I get quite a few from different organisations that I keep monitoring in terms of there is quite a few jobs out there, but they're just not getting the applications through for them. So I'd appreciate a little bit more information about, because I think it's linked, health and everything else is linked to, can I get a job? You know, can I get some money? Can I earn money? Can I look after my, you know, is there a vision? Has that individual got a vision? So I think that's all linked, and education particularly is linked, I think, very important.
It's broader. Councillor Heinrich?
Thank you, yeah, education background, so entirely what you said. The one thing that comes through clearly is that employment is an issue across practically every ward. No surprise there. We know that dependence on leisure and tourism, seasonal jobs, and that will link back to the NEETs issue, that there are not the permanent office factory-based jobs available where they would take young people on potentially. Now there are jobs around there, but you've got to get on your bike and go and knock on doors and find them. I mean, nothing's changed there from when I was young. But I think the other thing which is missing is NEETs are a function of the fact that getting to further education is not easy. You know, transport is expensive, and the distances. We've had the recent issue at Sheringham. You know, send people all over the place. Why should people spend 3-4 hours a day travelling to get to a course? It's going to put people off. So we've got nothing we can do about that as a district.
No, but it is another
county
factor.
issue.
Okay, Councillor Gray, and then I'll take Councillor Shaz.
I think we're all echoing basically what we need here is to look at the other things, but instead of discussing this part now, I think we should acknowledge the work that we have here, the work that's been done, and ask the questions we can about this report on the health day. You know, shift our focus, and then we can come back maybe another time.
Absolutely. I mean, health is very important to us.
Yes.
The Health and Wellbeing Board is very important to us. So I think absolutely what's been done is totally valid, and we really appreciate it. I think it's more, I think what we're saying is it's more multifactorial than perhaps we had. Given this data, it's more multifactorial than we had thought, but that's fine. We can move on with that. Councillor Shaz?
Yes, all the information that you would want to look at is in file 8 of the indices of deprivation pack. So that's on LSOA basis, which is probably 4 streets. The analysis, I've got the formula for the analysis if it helps where things aren't ranked by deciles, because I've done it for North Walsham in its entirety. I'm happy to share that. And then I've done a funky colour coding, so it's all RAG rated, because I know that we do love a RAG rating. So you can look at your issue areas. Just to highlight where people don't have private gardens, there's poor mental health, and we've got a beautiful park on the other side of the road. What we've learned is that road is in the top 10% worse for traffic accidents for pedestrians and cyclists. Highways didn't realise that. And now we're looking at the accident hotspots, see how we can make that road safer so people who don't have gardens can get to the park. So it gives you really granular data. It just depends on how low you want to go into it.
Yeah. Okay, that's very helpful. So, Councillor Withington, do you want to take us through your excellent work at the Wellbeing Board?
Sorry, thought it would be helpful to outline to members a little bit about what the Health and Wellbeing Partnership is. It's something that for a lot of people just goes on over there, and we don't really understand fully the ramifications of it. And actually what you're talking about here now, saying, well, you know, it's to do with education, it's to do with transport, it's all these other issues. Those are issues that we are dealing with and are at the base of what we do. So I am going to go a little bit simple, because I know for some people it isn't a new concept and they don't know anything about how we work. So the Health and Wellbeing Partnerships are part of the ICB structure, which has gone through enormous change, as you're all aware, over the last 6 months. But the Health and Wellbeing Partnerships are the one thing that is staying the same and will, fingers crossed, unless something else dramatic comes along, will be what is moving forward with us into new structures and will be part of the LGR as well. So I think we can be confident that that is going to happen, in that the annual report coming from the Public Health Director this year is going to be on how the Health and Wellbeing Partnerships can work together in the new areas, and looking at what the similarities and differences are. So for us, that's looking at the difference between us, East Yarmouth, and our bit into South Norfolk as well, so that we can actually work out a means of what the commonality is and what the priorities need to be, those new partnerships. All of us work on the basis of health inequalities, but as I've said, that also comes from an understanding of income, housing, disability, employment, transport in our individual areas. And they are really place-based, which is what I think has given them their strength and has helped them to be considered as a vital tool to move forward. The different health and wellbeing partnerships across the area, obviously because they represent different areas, all work in different ways, and they've all got different assets within those areas, so they've got different partners. But on the whole, they have a core set of partners, and then it's very much what's working in a particular area. But all of the partnerships have been through the Public Health Inequalities Toolkit process. So everything that has come out of our priorities has been based on looking at those health inequalities and working out what the priorities are for our areas. For North Norfolk, it's come out as MSK, musculoskeletal issues, which goes back to what you're saying about this is the impact on work, or the work is having an impact on that. It comes then into disability, it comes into transport, in that people can't get to work because they have there isn't the transport to get to it, and they can't ride a bike to it, and all these kind of things. So it's, rather than just saying we're looking at bad backs, this is actually a much more complex issue that needs to be addressed. So that's being looked at as one of the priorities. Digital, and we've chosen as the North Norfolk Health and Wellbeing Partnership to call it digital inclusion, because we felt that reflects more about what we need to do. So that's looking obviously at how we ensure everything that's happening within our area is actually maximising digital inclusion and giving people access to employment, to those things which have then an impact on health if they can't do it. So you can see how that path is being navigated a little bit. And then we have mental health, which initially it was led as a one working stream, but it was realised that actually it crosses over absolutely everything that we're doing. So we need to be working in every single work stream needs to have that thread going through it. So we've done that. And then health literacy, which is about how people can be part of that journey and understand what that journey is and have the information and accessibility to information. And also for providers to be making sure that people can access that information as well, because too often it's either written in such a way or it's presented in such a way that it's absolutely meaningless for the people who need to use it. So those are the threads. And then healthy living is the other work stream. We have moved on from having an actual health inequalities work stream to, because we have established so clearly now what our priorities are and what we need to be doing in those different areas, that we have now got a new sort of upper structure available where public health are there to ensure they work in every single work stream, and they are making sure that the health inequalities are the drivers, the targets for what we're trying to achieve, and they're reflected in the outcomes, but also working across the work streams. So it's not just MSK working on its own, it's looking at digital inclusion as well. So we've put a new structure in place that means that's gone through. So what are we actually doing in work streams? So we do get some money allocated to us. This year, for the first time, Public Health have allocated for 2 years, and we have over that 2 years, 200,000. Some of that money, 25% of it, funds the coordinator, because obviously these partnerships don't work without somebody being there to coordinate and do the admin and direct things a little bit. And that money in our partnership goes to North Norfolk District Council, and we have Catherine Van Batten, who is our coordinator. So her time is therefore paid for on that respect. The rest of the money is being used, last year was used to fund some specific projects that we commissioned to actually reflect the health inequalities that we wanted to tackle. And some of those were around youth. So we funded North Sea Swell, which is a surf project for young people, and particularly for youngsters in schools who are struggling and are likely to be coming out of school. So that was one of the projects which we've used. And then we also set aside a community fund, which was 28,000, that we worked with the Norfolk Community Foundation, and community assets were able to apply for that funding to run projects which matched the health inequalities that we have set as priorities. So it all comes back to those health inequalities and where we are, what we're trying to achieve. Everything goes back to that point. And we funded, I think it was 10 projects in the end, of different things. Some were youth-based. The North Walsham Park Run came out of that project as well, which was, hopefully we'll be starting in September when the new head's in place. So quite a broad spectrum of projects. We looked at geography of the area, so we tried to make sure Fakenham First have had some money from that. So we looked at geographical areas, trying to make sure we tackled those areas of particular deprivation, and also where there were high levels of inequality, and also across all ages, because it's very easy to just go for an older population. But actually, when you look at some of those deprivation, it is often working people who are not accessing the things they need, that are leading to poor health outcomes and lower life expectancies. So it was across all of those. We're continuing that vein for this year with this money. We will be looking at whether some of those projects, evaluating the outcomes, have they achieved them? If so, do we want to continue some of those rather than start something and then just drop the funding after 1 year? So that's going to be part of the evaluation. We will be looking to open it up again to communities to come forward, because very much part of this is about resilience. And we understand if we're asking community VCSEs, etc., and different community assets to come forward with some of the solutions for health inequalities, they can't do it without having some support there to be able to do it. So it's very much about trying to move people into a space where they can become more resilient, and those services can then be ongoing. So that's what we're trying to achieve. As Officer Grant referred to, NEETs is also a big area this year. We have, as part of our membership, we have, DWP, we have adult social care, we have all the main organisations on there. So it is very much people working together and adding value to projects. So the DWP are looking at their youth hubs at the moment, and then that's being now discussed as part of mental health work as well. Can we combine some of that work? So it's very much an adding value place to things, and NEETs is very much going to be part of that priority for the up and coming year. So that's a sort of quick overall look at it. It is a very, it's a big beast really, when you look at how many people are actually involved in it and the work that's going on.
Thank you. That was very, very helpful background. And you're obviously doing fantastic work. So very nice to hear that. So members, how do you want to take this forward? Because I feel there's a bigger piece of, I mean, you guys have got, it seems to me, you've got health quite well wrapped up in a way, from a sort of preventive and general point of view. And I wonder if we should go in a different direction. Our remit is to look at specific matters. Health seems quite a broad matter for us as a scrutiny committee to look at. It feels too general. I don't mind, I mean, you could look at dentistry, you would look at musculoskeletal or whatever. You could look at access to waiting times or whatever. But I don't know what you think. It seems to me that you're doing the work already, and that what would we add? What value would we add? And I'm sort of, the data is fantastic. I'm sorry, I'm struck by this housing, barriers to housing and services. I keep on returning to that, which obviously is part of what you're doing. But what do members, how would members like to take this forward? Because obviously there's a fantastic work already occurring in this space. Do we need to duplicate it? I think Councillor Cushing had his hand up.
Thank you, Richard. I have to say, I mean, thank you very much for the reports that you've given. This is obviously a huge area and a very serious subject. I suppose my level of puzzlement is I don't know what I don't know about this, because an awful lot of this is outside the scope of what the district council does. Now, we're talking about housing. I have a reasonable grasp over the years of where we are, and it just strikes me actually that's the area that's within the gift of this council to actually do something about. And me, that's probably where I think where we probably ought to be focusing our efforts. The rest of it is really very broad. And I suppose I'm really puzzled where you take this for, because it's probably not, as Councillor Cole said, this is probably not the report I was expecting to see. I was expecting to probably see a little bit more data, then we'd work out what we want to do off the back of it. Whereas we got some proposals there, some of which what I don't understand from the proposals is actually what is being asked of the council, what is being asked of this committee, what is being asked of officers in terms of resources. And also it is putting it in the context of where we are in the council life cycle, in the fact that we are obviously, if the government is to be believed, there will be unitary elections next May. It's your guess as good as mine as whether those will actually go ahead or not. But either way, this council there'll be an election, we assume, some description next May. So effectively this administration will come to an end. Maybe it'll be re-elected, or maybe something different will replace it. But it's a curious point in the electoral cycle to be creating something which is going to talk about creating strategies, which we are not going to be here to empower those. And the strategy is something that's 3 to 5 years. Well, I don't think it's really within our gift to define a strategy for somebody whoever may replace us at some point going down the line. So that's just my level of amusement and puzzlement, which you may not be surprised.
Councillor Gray.
I think there were some good comments made there, Councillor Cushion. I think this is an important piece of work. It's really good to be able to see all of this information. Yes, there is a lot of it. Yes, it's very broad. I think we have covered the fact that maybe we need to look back at what we were really looking and hoping to address. I'm not against the creation of an anti-poverty strategy. I don't know how long that would take for anything to be formed. I'm certainly not anti the idea itself, but I wonder whether at this point we should know the excellent work that's been done here, and obviously lots of thanks for that, but look to how we restructure to really get at what we were supposed to be getting at. We've accidentally fell into something, I think, if truth be told here.
I think actually it's quite fortuitous that we've discovered that the work's already been done, basically. To me, it seems as if
In that case,
Health and Wellbeing Board has got health and deprivation wrapped up in terms of it's got the resources, it's got the funding, it's got the contacts. So I don't know what we would add, what value we could add to that, because they're already doing the work that perhaps we thought we would be doing. And perhaps we should focus on something different.
I agree we should shift to something else, because I never really thought we were going to focus on that anyway. So I completely support that. And that's where I think we should take this. That would be my suggestion.
Well, I think do people agree with my assessment that the Health and Wellbeing Board is doing anything that we would possibly do in that space with more resources and more expertise?
Well, I think you're absolutely right there, Chair. No, we obviously should be supporting its work. And that's where I think our position should arise from, that we give all support we can within available resources.
Okay. Councillor Fletcher.
Thing as outlined of LGR and everything else, there's.
Okay, well, can we just put the anti-poverty strategy on one side for a second? Because that seems a very good idea, but it's entirely time dependent, isn't it? Whether it's something that we obviously would support it, whether it's something that we will want to do a pre-scrutiny on, for example. I don't know. Could you just bear that in mind for 1 sec? Councillor Fletcher.
No, it just one, the one thing we can do as councillors is kind of helpful communication, I would thought, because we do know, well, up to a point, the areas of deprivation to certain extent specific, families in our area. We get a lot of that sort of granular appreciation of things. I'm not sure whether that's perceived to what kind of modeling being part of actually possessing. We're just what worried as just how granular can you get with what with the organisation currently embedded. You're suggesting that communities themselves come forward. Quite often, people who are in a prime position aren't actually they don't put themselves forward. They don't want to be involved, so there's encouragement. I mean, it's at that level that we can help that in.
Yes.
Thank you. I think one of the other big priorities that we have got is the development of an asset-based, have you forgotten CD? ABCD. Thank you. Asset-based community development approach going on, which means that within individual communities, you have got those partners who are already working in that granular way in those communities. We've already started in Cromer, so there's quite extensive work going on in Cromer, and that the idea is that moves across the other communities that are showing those signs of higher levels of deprivation first as priority, and then you do get those people coming forward because they're already working with those people.
You talk about food bank.
Yeah, oh yeah, they're all part of it. Yeah, very much so.
So can we just return to the anti-poverty strategy for a sec? Because that was one of the suggestions. Do you think, I mean, it's not up to us to decide whether or not the organisation goes ahead with it, but would we be prepared to offer pre-scrutiny advice on such a strategy should it be agreed? Emma, has this not been in the pipeline for a while? In terms of, I mean, is it a brand new idea, in which case there's no way possibly we're going to get it done by next May?
I'm not sure of the timescale for the poverty strategy to come forward. You could look at it as pre-scrutiny and have some input on its way through. I don't know whether Officer Grant can give an indication of when that would be. I'm assuming it would probably it would be a cabinet decision potentially, full council. I'm not sure. Not sure of the extent of it, but yeah.
Yeah, it would be a new strategy. So my idea behind that was to pull together all the work that the council is currently doing around anti-poverty, and to concentrate on the priorities that the council wants to focus on going forward, leading up to and beyond LGR. So some of that work would then lead into beyond LGR, into the new unitaries. We've already seen from the partnership, there's great work going on that we need to pull together to show how we want to address those areas of deprivation, where those particular resources or priorities are, and to then have that measured against the strategy and to then feed back through that strategy. In terms of timings, it wouldn't be, it's likely to not be autumn, but the next overview and scrutiny.
Oh, right. So what do members feel? Because we have these recommendations, and one of them is that we endorse the development of a strategy, but Councillor Cushing?
If I may ask, I mean, having been here a few times before, when this committee is, I mean, obviously it's not up to us, it's up to the cabinet to do that. But I know in times past where we've suggested work being done, when the chief executive has been here on more than one occasion, he has jumped and said, we effectively, that's extra resources for the council to do. We do not have the bandwidth to do it. I know from my discussions with him on a one-on-one basis, obviously, that he says the staff are going to be stretched supporting LGR. I know in terms of the planning department, we have to revise the local plan as well. So, I mean, has this been passed by him? Has he said that actually there is the capacity within the housing to do that? And also just the other thing about other strategies that I think of before, we have the economic development strategy took 4 years to materialise. The housing strategy took a long time to materialise. The housing one, for simply the basis it's a complicated process. You would expect anything like it would take months of work in order to collate that work together. This sounds equally complicated as all of that. So I'm just thinking we've got 9 months left. Not much happens in August in this organisation. I just, without that sort of input, I am just sceptical about, not that I'm against an anti-poverty strategy at all, but looking at the timescales and resources, we haven't got down any people who are involved or indeed any timescale to do that or any confirmation that those resources would be made available, because I'm assuming that's above and beyond the day job that you've got to do that. So that's all my questions.
Councillor Penfold?
Yes, it's a tricky one because I take on board all of that. But I think if it's a strategy that needs doing, it needs doing. Clearly, it's an important area of work, and I guess we don't know whether in 9 months' time we will be here or not. That's the thing. We don't think we will, but who knows what the government's going to decide. So, given that, and the importance of this, perhaps we should. But I do. Yeah, it's a difficult one to sort of balance. But I'd be keen to, sort of perhaps take a lead from, as Councillor Cushing says, officers, chief executive, as to resources and whether they are best put in that area.
So we might be endorse the principle, but not necessarily the development. That's sort of the direction of travel. Councillor Green?
You're stealing my thunder there, Chair. I was going to say, I absolutely support it. You know I support it. I'm not anti any of this. I don't think beyond that, that's anything that we can do. We can say, yes, we support the creation of it, but that's as far as we can go. So that would be my recommendation to the committee, that yes, we absolutely support this, but that's as far as we can go at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, happy to second that, Chair.
Okay, that's good. So that's 10.2 in terms of recommendations that the European Scrutiny support the development of or endorse, is the same thing. It can stay as the wording, endorse the development of a Norfolk anti-poverty strategy. So is everyone happy with that? With the recommendations 10.1, I feel we've had a presentation really of the Norfolk Health and Wellbeing Board just now, and we should and so we've been informed about what's happening, and so we've done it.
I feel like that's fair, and I feel like we've all said we might need to shift focus on things. So maybe committing to that wouldn't be the best thing right now.
No, so we note the report and we note the report which presents the current priorities and work programmes for North Norfolk Health and Wellbeing Partnership, including how those priorities. So it's just rewording that very slightly. Is everyone happy with that? Claire, did you get that wording? Would you like to read it back?
So the overview scrutiny notes the report from the partnership.
You got your mic on there, so.
Apologies, shall I do that again? So the Overview and Scrutiny Committee notes the report from the North Norfolk Health and Wellbeing Partnership. Is that sufficient, or would you like anything further?
Well, that would probably be
Sufficient.
if we're going to be crisp and concise. Okay. So so we've supported the development of the North Norfolk anti-poverty strategy, which is 10.2. 10.3 is really feels to me like straying into the work of the North Norfolk Health and Wellbeing Partnership, and I don't feel that's our remit. Do you? If that the Norfolk Health and Wellbeing Partnership be invited to comment on and inform any future development. I'm assuming you're going to be doing that, and we don't need to have that as it's nothing to do with us. You'll be doing it anyway. So we delete 10.3. Is everyone happy with that as a recommendation? Simply because it's been very ably taken care of. Yep.
I think we could be perhaps informed about.
We always read them, Councillor Withington, don't, he's just letting a side down transiently.
I mean, I wonder whether yes, it is in the portfolio holder report, but we probably ought to have an update to this committee at some point.
Okay, so as part of 10.2 then, we have a regular update. Well, no, as in every 3 months or something, yeah. Quarterly?
May I suggest that perhaps we can link that to 10.1
Yes.
and a general update?
Okay.
And so I would say that the notes the report and
invites the
invites
partnership to update members of the committee every quarter. Something like that.
Yep. Everyone happy with that? Yep. Okay, so that's 10.1 and 10.2. 10.3 we are deleting because it's already being done. 10.4, again, is it up to us to dictate? I mean, they're already doing this. It's an integral part of our work. So 10.4 we'll take out. But the 10.5 is that council continues to invest in the low income family tracker. As a strategic intelligence tool enabling people services in the health and wellbeing partnership to identify overlapping vulnerability, etc. That's
They're going to be using it anyway, aren't they?
well, I think we do support it, don't we?
We do support it, but it's going to be in use anyway,
Yeah.
isn't it?
So
it's not something new that needs authorising, is it?
I don't think it's within our remit to
I think that would be a full council anyway, wouldn't
tell
it?
you what to do. Actually, I think you're in charge of this, so it's not our scope, unfortunately. So we can't. So 10.5. No, I think, but yes, do you want to have a separate item on that? Because I always got the feeling that it was running through all the reports that we saw, because when you give a portfolio holder report, you always refer back to it in terms of how many benefits you've given to people because of the lift analysis that you've done. So
yeah, but we use the lift for the targeting in the household income maximisation, and we report on the levels through the portfolio holder.
Would you like a quarterly report back on the lift data together with the wellbeing partnership? Would that inform you in your work? No?
I think if people need request support.
Okay. We won't go any further with that one. Okay. I had an additional recommendation. I wondered if we could use the available deprivation data to inform our focus on relieving barriers to housing and access. Because I feel that's something that's really within our gift. Well, it's within one of our responsibilities as a district council. And I wondered if we should push harder on, whether there was something there for us to push harder on. What do you think?
I think we should be careful that we don't inadvertently do what's just happened with the health data that we've just had and the report that's been given. Let's make sure that we actually have a direction
What do you want?
that we agreed.
Well, it jumped out as part of this data, and it's the JSNA data that says that we are 32nd out of 296 councils in terms of deprivation to housing and services. I mean, that's the one thing that struck me from this report. I didn't think actually we were too bad on health. We were surprisingly less deprived on income, which I thought was unusual. I can't see that.
They must have picked just certain places.
Yeah.
I think it's also, if you look at our demographic, we have an awful lot of retired folk who have decent income, which I find would skew the figures.
That's a good point. So that's the reason I bring that up, is because housing is shrieking up as something that, is there anything else that we could do? I don't know, it's up to you guys to agree. My wording was that we use the available deprivation data to inform NNDC's focus on relieving barriers to housing and services. It probably should be housing rather than houses and services, because we don't really have any levers whatsoever on services, sadly. But if people feel they want to look at the data before we add any further recommendation, I'm happy to be persuaded.
I'd rather that we did. I'd rather we set some time aside to actually look at the indices and what it's saying. I'm not saying we have to get super granular with it, but to find out what really piques our interest and what we can do. We've all had some really good, interesting points raised today. I'd like to make sure we nail on something that we really agree.
So we've rather truncated the recommendations, I'm afraid. Are you happy with that? Because we feel our role is limited. You had a rather generous interpretation of what we could do. I'm afraid we have to put ourselves back in our box. So are you happy with the recommendations we've got?
Yeah, so I've got two recommendations that we've talked about, 10.1 and 10.2,
Okay.
and the rest have been removed.
And I do think this ward level data is very interesting, but can that be part of our next discussion? You know, the fact that certain areas are, not surprisingly, but some possibly surprisingly, particularly. So perhaps the unlimited dig into the data that we're going to do could also have that in it.
I would ask whether Councillor Shires would be prepared, given the amount of time that she's invested in looking at the indices, and she does like numbers apparently, whether she may like to help us to explore some of that data, because I think it would be beneficial.
I certainly agree that would be useful. I mean, one thing that's missing is any age profile. I'm pretty certain in my own ward that if I'd pulled out the pensioner award, it would
skew it dramatically.
Skew it a little bit. But no doubt that data is there, Councillor Shires.
Okay, is everyone in agreement with that? So the direction of travel is another session, more detailed session with the data, the raw data that and then are we minded to ask Councillor Shires to engage with us? Yep. Okay. Okay, fine. So is everyone?
Chair, can I just clarify, would that be in a meeting or would you consider that be outside?
Do you want that to be an out? I would have said an out of cycle meeting, I would have said, because we haven't got the time actually. We've got other things booked, haven't we, for other meetings. So that would be an additional meeting. I think the middle of August would be rather nice, don't you? I think you're all looking forward to that. Okay, so that is, thank you very much indeed. That was really interesting.
Chair, could we have a proposal on second or
Yeah,
those
proposed
recommendations?
seconded for the recommendations. Yeah,
Thank you.
lovely. So now we move on to.
Yeah, can we have could we just have a vote, please?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you so much for your input. Okay, so now we have the cabinet work programme. Does anyone have any comments on that? Other than to note, I'd be glad to see the fly tipping fixed penalty notices item. And that's quite controversial at the moment, isn't it? Okay. Any comments on the recommendation and actions tracker?
Chair, can we just cover 15 mobile connectivity survey?
Oh, God, sorry. I'm always ahead of myself. Councillor Gray, would you like to update?
Super short verbal update. You ready?
Yep.
So me and the chair of Overview and Scrutiny have come up with a series of questions which we believe may lead to good data that will be comparable towards the already interesting data that exists. We have a meeting booked with comms to discuss how that might move forward. Unless anyone has any questions, that's about as far as it's got.
Everyone happy with that? Short and sweet, okay? Yep, well, we just get carried away with ourselves. So, work programme. Sorry, I was talking about the tracker, recommendations tracker. We want agenda item 17. Anyone got any comments on that? No? Okay. So the work programme. Officer Shopland, have you got any comments?
I think members will note that in September, we're due to have the PCC attend. Obviously, given the election date, that would be interesting. We will touch base with the office. It should be in their diary, but obviously we will touch base and there is a possibility that will need to be pushed back for a meeting. The September meeting looks fairly busy anyway. So it might not necessarily be the end of the world if it was pushed back to a month, but we will obviously keep members informed of that.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any other comments about the ongoing work programme? Do we want to see Anglia Water again in December, or shall we transfer our interest to another utility company? Because I feel we have rather seen Anglia Water. They've done wonderful jobs in presenting their work to us. I think, and I don't think, do you think we need to see them in 6 months?
I think we've seen Anglia Water enough times.
Yeah. So I think there will be ongoing problems with connection for sites, but I don't think that's going to be worth a meeting, do you?
No, I mean, it does mention a progress report from them. They don't have to give us that in person, but presumably they would provide a progress report
Yes.
for us.
Did you ask them? Yeah.
Albeit that just a written report would be good on the June actions.
It'd be quite nice if it was a bit more specific in terms of what they actually, so when they're doing a phosphate capture plant, which one it is, so that you can say to your residents, don't worry, that phosphate is being trapped at, fill in the blank, rather than just saying they've done it in Norfolk. What do people feel about that?
Yeah, and I think we had specific questions they were going to report back on.
Yes,
So
which we are chasing up on.
We do need those. Did we have a potential visit booked as well for sometime in August? I don't know how we've got on with that.
I think the idea is to push that back slightly in terms of timing. I think it was felt that August might not be the best month, but we are, are looking at a date for that in the autumn.
They could give us their update when we have our visit.
Absolutely, it might be one of the ones with a new phosphate capture plant. Okay, so who would we like another utility to come and stay in their place?
Is there not some interest in electricity
I
companies?
think there is a bit of interest. Would that be UK Power Networks?
We could have a conversation with them.
You think?
Well,
rather than
try.
Rather than Eon or
UK Power Networks.
It's UK Power Networks that seem to have the infrastructure around this
part
of the world. So
we can make some inquiries and see if we can encourage attendance.
I think that would be very interesting. Because if you remember, the chief executive was quite sceptical about the supply here, even though it's running under the ground at great rate. Okay, so is that everything of the Shopland?
Yes, that's all I have, Chair.
Anyone got any other points? Okay, we can close the meeting then.